Welcome in. What?
Oh, sorry. I was saying bye to my coworker real quick.
No, you're good. You're good. Welcome into the Washed Up Walk-Ons podcast special episode today. Something that I didn't have planned. Sitting at work yesterday, get an email from Max's coworker here. Hey, you want to have Max Chadwick on to talk about Iowa Hawkeyes in the draft? Talk about next season. I was like, yeah, sure. I'll take a free episode. We're in the off season. Max, you run a podcast. I'm sure you understand the need for content. When a free episode comes to you, you take it. So today on the show, Max Chadwick, host of Preferred Walk-On. Love the namesake, by the way. We love that on this show. And a college football show with Max Chadwick. Can you tell me a little bit about that before we get into this?
Yeah, first of all, guys, thanks for having me on. I know Dave and I begged you guys to have me on, so I appreciate it. But yeah, man, the Preferred Walk-On name, a little tongue-in-cheek. You know, I don't want to make it too serious or anything like that. And yeah, so we came up with the name Preferred Walk-On. It's me and this guy Dalton Wasserman. Now I hate how it's Preferred Walk-On with Max Chadwick because it was originally just by myself. And then I added a wonderful co-host at Dalton Wasserman now, who works at PFF with me, and he's been amazing. So it's pretty funny how it keeps saying with Max Chadwick. It's like, no, it's actually like the two of us now. But yeah, it's been fantastic, man. We're interviewing a bunch of great players, a bunch of great coaches, doing cool episodes. And yeah, like we interviewed Cooper DeJean last year, which is super cool. Connor Colby we interviewed too. Yeah, man, it's been an awesome ride so far. I'm excited to see where it goes.
I did a little bit of like, okay, this Max guy, I got to figure out who this is, what's he doing? So I'm on the Twitter, dude, you're all over the place. You guys are just, you have to have an insane day to day. You're just like constantly college football. Like, does your mind ever get off of college football?
No, it doesn't. And that's why I joined PFF and have the job I do now. It was like when I used to be a kid, I was obsessed with football, and my parents instituted a rule at dinner where first 5 minutes of dinner, let Max talk about football. After that, you can't talk about it anymore. Like, we're not letting you do it anymore. So
I like that. That's very smart. Very smart by your mom.
My mom was like, even my dad loved talking football, but even my dad was like, dude, I can't talk to you about the best offensive lineman in the NFL anymore. Like, so yeah, I knew at that point when I was like 8 years old and that obsessed, and I knew based off my athletic genes that there's no way I'm going to be able to play football at a high level. Yeah. I knew at that level, I was like, yeah, I should probably try to make this a career. So this has been honestly a dream come true. And to answer your question, no, my mind does not ever come off of college football ever.
Your parents were just going to bed like, what was he talking about? Some receiver from a D3? I don't understand.
Like, they're like, this kid, man. So thankfully it worked out for me. And yeah, I'm living the dream, man.
How did we end up at PFF? Was this podcast something that started before PFF and they picked you up, or it was once you were employed there, then you guys started it?
No, so I started once I got. So basically, how I started it was I was a writer for PFF, college football writer, and Dave Safar, who you guys interacted with. He is incredible at getting just amazing guests. So like I interviewed Caleb Williams, I interviewed Ola Fashano, Joe Alt. Jaden Daniels, Bo Nix, like a bunch of just amazing players. And like we turned them into articles, which is really cool. But I was like, man, this is like the fact that these are just sitting on my hard drive right now, like 20-minute one-on-one with Caleb Williams, like not out there. So I asked PFF, I was like, hey, is it cool if I just start my own YouTube channel and just post them? And they're like, yeah, go ahead. Ended up doing pretty well. They said, hey, let's make this a show because we don't have a college football show. Did that, added Dalton to the show. And yeah, it's kind of taken off from there. So yeah, it's been fun, man. The YouTube actually was my old podcast I used to have with my friends, the Boomer Bust, which is like an NFL draft show. So we kind of just turned it into a Preferred Walk-On now. But yeah, man, it's been awesome so far. And I'm like I said, the off season. It sucks that college football seas's over, but the off season is always so much fun because I usually would get the most interviews. Yeah. So I'm extremely excited for this off season for sure.
Well, we're excited to have you. I'm curious, how well versed are we with the Iowa Hawkeyes? I know from my standpoint, from following PFF from a distance, I'm not totally bought into I'm not like a super follower, but it seems like PFF loves Iowa guys. I don't know, something about it.
We do.
Am I correct in that?
Yeah, we do. Yeah, I'm pretty well versed. I'm a Big Ten guy. I grew up a huge Penn State fan. So I know Iowa pretty well, and yeah, I mean, we love defensively, especially, man. You guys have some studs, even coming back to school next year. I'm sure we'll get to in a second, but yeah, man, I am pretty well versed in Iowa, which is a good and bad thing, whether or not you're watching the offense or defense. So
little bit of a polarizing few years we've had in Iowa City.
Right.
So let's get into it. I want to start. I know we on the email we talked. Hey, let's talk about maybe the transfer portal, who we got coming back next year. I want to start though with the draft here in a few months, and the guys you mentioned, Cooper DeJean. We've got Tory Taylor headed to the combine that just came out yesterday. I'm not sure how well versed you are with guys like Logan Lee or Joe Evans. What do we think about those guys? Where do you see? I know I watched your video, your first mock draft that came out a couple days ago, and I think you took Cooper somewhere for that.
I think I took him to the Vikings at 11.
Yes, the Vikings. Yeah. So
and
obviously,
did not like it, but yeah.
Yeah, and obviously a highly rated safety cornerback. He got hurt. That sucks. There was in Iowa City we had the is he going to come back? Like, will he give us one more year? Obviously, he decided not to. So, what do we see with Cooper? What makes him so great from your guys' standpoint? And where do you see him going that high? Is he a potential top 10 pick?
I think he can. I don't know if he will go in the top 10. I think he's more of a top 20 guy. I would probably take him top 10. I mean, he is a guy that, like, I think he might be the best corner in this year's draft. I think just from a tape standpoint, like, it's almost like Dalton put it perfectly when you're watching Cooper DeJean. It's just almost like boring watching, man, because it's just like, it's so good. It's so technically sound. He's such an incredible player in coverage. He's so versatile. You could play safety, like you mentioned. You could play corner. I would start him at outside corner. I think he deserves a shot out there.
You think a true corner spot for him?
Yes, I think he deserves it. I think he at least deserves a shot there.
He's breaking down barriers here. He's coach's kid. Blue collar.
I know the Rashard Mendenhall tweet kind of went around, and people were like, "Man, thanks to Iowa." I mean, the only two guys on the
Riley Moss,
Moss, and Cooper DeJean. So, but yeah, man, he's such a great run defender. You could play in the slot. You could even played strong side linebacker sometimes for Iowa. Played great in coverage. And then he's just a freak athlete, dude. Like, he's such a great athlete. Hopefully, he's able to participate in the combine. We get some numbers on him. But I mean, you look back at what he did in high school. I think he set the school record for passing yards, passing touchdowns, receiving yards, receiving touchdowns, interceptions. Also had more career basketball points than Harrison Barnes. You watch his basketball highlights. It's ridiculous. The dunks he's got.
I was going to ask if you'd seen them. They're insane.
Oh my God, dude. And then he's a state champion in the hurdles, state champion in the 200-meter dash. And then he played 3 years of varsity baseball. It's like, dude, I would kill for any of those, like, in my high school career, but he's got all of them. So yeah, he's a superstar athlete with excellent tape. I mean, great technique. I mean, it's almost like the perfect package, honestly. So I think he's worth a top 10 pick. I don't know if he will go that high. I think he will go around the 15 to 20 range, but he might be the top corner in this year's draft, and he is the top corner right now on PFF's big board.
I think what you said there, your partner said there, like, it's almost boring. It's so true. It's like when he first started playing special teams at Iowa and then he got onto the defense, you wondered, like, you saw those highlights from high school and you're like, okay, but he's playing like 1A in Iowa, right? Like, is he really going to make other people look like that? And then you watch these highlights of him, like, toe tapping the interception in the end zone and some of these other things. It looks like he's playing in slow motion and everybody else is, like, trying so hard. He truly is just one of those guys who's just built different. Like,
yeah, it's absurd, man. And the punt return, I remember that unfortunately got called back, which was BS. But yeah, man, it's just like that guy, his tape, which is, again, boring is like the best thing you could say for a corner. Like, corner and offensive line, you want to be boring. He is kind of like that, man, where it's just like, yeah, you don't even look to number 3 side of the field, man, because he's going to be locked down. So I think he's a bona fide star. I would take him top 15 at least, but he probably will go in the top 20 if I had to make a prediction.
Can we also take Tory Taylor top 15? I think he's worth the value.
He's gotten a lot of work, that's for sure. So he's one of the most experienced punters, I think, to ever come out of college football. Often he was out there. But yeah, man, he definitely will be probably an NFL punter next year for sure.
Do you think, like, you see him getting drafted?
Yeah, I mean, I can't imagine. I'm trying to think of the other punters who would be even up there. He definitely was one of the best punters in the country. So not only was he, like, out there a ton, like, he also was, like, extremely efficient. Yeah, I think there's definitely a chance he gets drafted. If not, he's definitely gonna be one of the top punters in this year's draft, and probably will be a starting punter in the NFL next year.
I hope so. I think he is. I'm a former long snapper, so I'm pretty well versed. I'm pretty into the special teams, and I think what people downplay there is playing in Iowa. You know, you get the first half of the season and the ball flies real nice. It's warm. It's the weather's 60, 70 degrees. It starts to get cold, and if you're into the stats enough, the guys in the southern part of the country, their stats don't drop off as much as some of the guys in the northern part do. So when a guy in the Big Ten is able to put up the numbers consistently like Tory has, I think that's what's the most impressive. His leg strength is just so crazy. Like, he didn't even really know how to kick a consistent American style spiral punt until like last year. He would just kick like the Aussie style, like pooch punts, but he'd hit them 50 yards. Like, it's just, he's just insane. So that's exciting. In the email mentioned transfer portal. I don't know if Iowa has any guys in the portal.
Dave might have put that. He put that for, I think, a lot of the emails. So I don't know.
Just as like a stock, I don't think it's interesting. Iowa hasn't picked up anybody as much as we did last year. We do have some guys entering the portal, and usually those guys end up sort of. I think Labus, the backup quarterback, ended up at Central Michigan.
Well, we do have one pretty big transfer.
Well, we did bring in 5-star tackle Kadyn Proctor.
Dude, huge. Might be a little tampering on your guys' end, but honestly,
there's no tampering.
If you're not cheating, you're not trying college football now. No, I think that's BS. Anyways, I think that people are going crazy over that for no reason. But man, that's a huge get. I mean, he was, I think, the best tackle in this year's portal. He kind of started off rough for Alabama, but again, like, if you're a left tackle in the SEC. Starting for Alabama immediately as a true freshman, like, I would expect it to be rough for you. He actually played really well down the stretch of the season, especially in that Georgia game. He played really well in the SEC title game. I'm excited for him, man. I think he could be a future first-round pick. I think that getting him as your left tackle for the next 2 years, like, that's a pretty big get for Iowa.
It might have been PFF that put it out. I think he might have graded out as the best tackle in the college football playoff.
It might have been, yeah. I gotta look it up, but yeah.
So that's interesting. He did struggle a little bit, which is what prompted the text message, I believe, from one of the Iowa staff members, like, hey, hang in there, man. Like, you're doing all right. He was in a buzzsaw, though. That's a buzzsaw you run into.
Yeah.
Regardless of whatever position you're starting at as a true freshman in the SEC, physically, obviously, has all the tangible things you would want. I mean, he is a literal building out there. He's built like a truck. And Iowa lacked some. You mentioned Connor Colbert earlier. He's been one of the brighter spots in Iowa's offensive line situation over the past couple of years. It's been shaky a little bit. We've been trying to find some of those guys like Linderbaum, like Wirfs, going back even further, guys like Brandon Sheriff. We haven't had one of those guys really step up to the forefront. Obviously, Kadyn fills that role here as we move into this season, but he's a huge anchor for our line, and hopefully it gets a lot better from there. Let's talk coming back next season, 2024. Iowa had, specifically on the defensive side of the ball, Iowa had like everybody just get together and be like, yeah, we'll run it back one more year. And I noticed that on you guys laid out like PFF's top 101 players from the 2023 season. Cooper, not the highest Hawkeye on that list. It was his counterpart, Sebastian Castro. Tell me about Castro. What do you guys see from him?
Dude, he is a star, man. So just kind of preview. So I actually, starting today, I started dropping my top 10 returning players at every position list. Unfortunately, Cade McNamara did not make my top 10 quarterbacks that came out today. But I will say that Sebastian Castro, I think right now I have him number 3 for corners, which is crazy. You know, we got guys like Will Johnson coming back, Benjamin Morrison, Tacario Davis, Travis Hunter, Jabbar Muhammad. Like, Sebastian Castro was fantastic this past year. A little bit older, so I don't know how good of a prospect he'll be. He's a 6-year senior now coming back. But I believe he's the most valuable corner in the country this past season, according to our wins above average metric. He's been fantastic. Not great in single coverage, but, man, he's great in zone. Again, he's a lot like DeJean, not like a freak athlete sense, but in the sense of, like, he's just a great run defender, really solid in coverage, could play in the slot, played a little outside too. I like Sebastian Castro a lot. I honestly think he was one of the most underrated players in college football this past season, and probably still one of the most underrated players in college football. Like, I don't think when you talk about the top returning corners in the country, not a lot of people talk about Sebastian Castro. They should be. So I think that, yes, losing DeJean hurts, but Iowa has another superstar, a couple superstars in their secondary. Honestly, I got Xavier Nwankpa and Quinn Schultz right now in my top 10 safeties. So they got some really, really good players in that back end. So I think Iowa's secondary is still, even without DeJean, is still one of the best in the country.
Studs, dude. They're so like they're bringing back an absolute like squad on that defense,
dude. And then I got 2 linebackers in my top 10 too. You got Jay Higgins and Nick Jackson. I love
coming back.
Yeah, it's like
now,
the Iowa defense is alive and well, man.
Well, they're alive. They're just geriatric. We're very old.
Exactly. Yeah.
Which is interesting that you mentioned Castro as a prospect, because that is something that NFL teams look at, right? Like it's NFL, not for long. A lot of these guys, their likelihood to stay in the league past 3, 4, 5 years, it's just not really there. Injury is a big part of that. The game is played at such an intense, high speed. The playoffs were watching the playoffs last month was an example of that. It's just like every hit on TV makes my body hurt. And it's tough to draft a guy who's like 25 and like could have a family, you know?
Yeah.
You want that 21, 22-year-old whose body still like doesn't have the miles on it. But you're right. We've got Nick Jackson, who transferred in last year, one of the bigger transfers from last year. Like second in the Big Ten in tackles behind Jay Higgins, who had like 170,000 tackles.
Dude, yeah.
So we have those two in the middle, and then the DBs that we just talked about. It's crazy. Iowa's defense, I don't know if you guys have done anything like this, but they have to be projected as a top 5, top 3 defense again next year.
Yeah, I haven't done that yet, but I can't imagine. Dude, not even like, okay, just looking purely at the talent, yes, they'd be up there. Then you add in the best defensive coordinator in the country, and Phil Parker is coaching up that defense. Like that adds, like, it almost like you could put me and a bunch of my buddies out there and have those 11 guys. If Phil Parker's coaching us up, like, I'd probably put us in the top 15 or so. So he is just a genius. And I talked to Cooper about him. He's like, dude, Phil is like unbelievably good. So he's the best DC in the country. He literally won Iowa games this past year, won them games the year before. I saw a stat, or I actually looked up a stat where it's like the least efficient offenses in college football in 2022 and what their record was. The top 10 worst offenses in the country in terms of EPA per play were all like 2-10, 1-11, 3-9. And then Iowa was like, what, 9-3 last year? Or
10-2.
10-2. Yeah, it was just like, he's a miracle worker. Phil Parker
11-1 without the Minnesota thing.
Yeah, so he's a miracle worker, Phil Parker. So yeah, he's the best DC in the country, and then you got superstars in that defense that are veteran players, like you guys mentioned. Yeah, it's gonna be a really good Iowa defense once again next year.
It's unbelievable. Grant, don't let me hog the mic here. If you have any questions or anything.
No, it's good. I mean, I'm trying to get as much knowledge from Max as I can. I don't want to interrupt him at all.
This is our student intern, Max, and I see a lot of parallels between you two. I feel like Grant could come work for PFF. I hope they don't.
I love it, man. Yeah, absolutely. So you guys both played. I was looking at your stuff earlier. So you guys both played at Iowa, or
Grant did not. Grant is.
You know, intramural fullback.
Oh, okay. Love it.
So my other co-host has a real job, as we like to say. He's got a sales job that works during the day. I do this plus some other stuff as my job for full-time from home. So that's why I can hop on at noon and record these things. Grant's our student intern. He goes to the University of Iowa. He's the only one that's still enrolled at the university. But yeah, I played long snapper, played it from 13 to 17. So got to play in some of those pretty fun upsets, cool wins. Got destroyed by Christian McCaffrey in the 2015 Rose Bowl. Not a big deal.
Oh my God. That was first play of the game, right? Didn't he take it to the house first play?
That's correct. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep. Allegedly. It's just nice to know he does that to the NFL players too.
Oh yeah.
That's our only saving grace.
Yeah, that's not a guy I would feel too bad about letting him score, 3 times or whatever he did in that Rose Bowl. But yeah.
Yeah. What do you guys see as far as this Iowa team as a whole in the new Big Ten? I'm curious about that.
Yeah, so obviously new offensive coordinator, that'll help. I like Cade McNamara a lot, man. I think he's a good game manager quarterback. I think they got to get back to running the football.
That's a buzzword, by the way. Game manager, Brock Purdy.
Honestly, like, dude, people like look down on that. It's like, dude, you need that sometimes. Like,
you want that.
Nobody could ever. Not everyone could be Patrick Mahomes out there. Like, you need sometimes a guy who's just going to run the system. The problem was for Iowa that the system was pretty bad last year, but now it should be hopefully better. It's tough because that defense is so good, and you want to say, but now that you're not in the Big Ten West, there's no such thing as a Big Ten West anymore. Right. It's not like you're playing, other teams that are like you and that they have no offense but a great defense. So it's not like you can get into these 7-3 slugfests anymore. It's tough. I do think Iowa's going to be still a pretty solid team next year, probably a top 30, 35 team in the country. But yeah, like you mentioned, I haven't looked at their schedule, so I don't know quite who the big teams they have on it. But I do think Iowa will definitely compete. And I do think that they are still going to have a great defense. And once you have that, I mean, it's going to be – they should still have a winning record next year for sure. And maybe still compete as one of the top, 6 or 7 teams in the Big Ten next year.
It's tough because with 18 teams, now, like, if you have 10-team conferences, it's really – you can place your expectations in a spot where, hey, we should be able to get to a conference championship once every 5 years, at least once every decade. Mm-hmm. Now with 18 teams in a league, like, there's going to have to be some serious readjustments of expectations and success during the regular season because 2 out of 18 make it. And generally, like, the same 4 teams are going to be fighting for those 2 spots. Like, there's just a hierarchy that's there. And you bring in teams like Oregon and Washington. I know the interesting thing is in the new Big Ten, I think 5 or 6 teams have new head coaches going into next year. Washington is one of them. Washington, Grant, remind me if I'm wrong.
It's a Jedfish.
Yeah. Well, but are they coming to Iowa City or do we go there?
Oh, they're coming here.
Yeah.
Okay, so they come to Iowa City. I think we play UCLA next year.
Yeah.
They have a new head coach.
Yeah.
So maybe a chance to establish.
Yeah, I'm looking at that schedule, man. It actually is way easier than I expected it to be. I mean, you got Ohio State in Columbus, and that's I think Ohio State's if they're not the number 1 team in the country, they're number 2. So
really going into next year.
Yeah, I think I put Georgia number 1, but I think Ohio State is number 2. I think what they brought back everyone, and they added one of the best running backs in the country, Quinshon Judkins, the best safety in the country, and Caleb Downs. Like, it's just
they got
stupid.
Judkins.
Yeah.
Oh, Jesus.
Yeah, and TreVeyon Henderson's back. So they have 2 of the top 6 running backs in the country next year. Like, it's just like absurd. So I haven't made it. So I predicted Michigan before the year last year to win it all. I haven't decided yet, but I think I'm leaning Ohio State this year. I think they are loaded this year. But I'm looking at your schedule, dude. I mean, like you said, Washington, I think is going to take a big step back next year. Without DeBoer, without Penix and
their whole offense was gone, right?
Their whole offense is gone, and they have a new quarterback as well. I don't know, man. I think you guys are actually this is an easier schedule than I think. So
7.5 wins is what they came out at early, the books, and I think every year it's like Iowa over.
I would take the over on that. For sure.
There's 8 wins on that schedule. Definitely.
I'm looking right now as guaranteed losses. I only see Ohio State. And I know Iowa State might be pretty good next year, and you guys play them. I don't see another team in the top 25 that I had I think the only team that you play as a top 25 team is probably Ohio State. I don't see another one on the schedule right now.
I'd love to know. Yeah.
We'll see.
Okay.
11-1? I think
can we lock that in right now, Max?
I don't think it's crazy. If the Hawks go 11-1, I don't think people are sitting there like mind blown. I really don't.
No.
And it's probably because if the offense, like we've talked about, can get that's the biggest question. Is like, okay, Iowa's been dead on offense for 3 years. If they can do anything, like if we can just get anything out of them and they can surprise some people, well, then this team becomes scary. Because if this team can score 25 points, then Phil Parker is going to put the clamp down, and it's going to be over. Like, so I don't know.
And a 12-team playoff too. Like, well, and Iowa, like if they go 11-1, like they're in the playoff. If they go 11-1,
you don't even have to make that. That's the fun thing about being in one of the 2 big conferences. If you're in the SEC or the Big Ten, the 3rd and 4th best teams have good chances to make the 12-team playoff. Definitely the 3rd in both of those conferences.
Yeah. Dude, I was looking at it. So if there's a 12 team this year, every undefeated team obviously would have made it. Every 11-1 team would have made it. And every 10-2 Power 5 team would have made it besides Oklahoma. So, like, if you go 10-2, you're almost locked into a playoff spot. So, I think that's certainly looking at that schedule right now. I can't believe, honestly, how easy the schedule is. So, Ohio State's really the only one that I'm like, oh, that's the only one that I'm like, yeah, it's gonna be a loss. Other than that, I think every other game on the schedule is certainly winnable for Iowa.
I'll take it.
We'd love to hear that.
I'll take it.
Grant, you got anything you want to talk about? Any other players on Iowa that you want to?
Yeah, well, I'm curious. So is there anyone who maybe isn't on one of your top 10 lists that you could see rising up here by November of this year? Like, oh, watch out for this guy.
That's a good question. I'm trying to look right now to see what I don't have.
Are you asking from Iowa, Grant?
Yeah.
I would say.
Yeah.
Let me give my opinion.
Or if you got just like a cool guy,
throw out one. I'm
Oregon
trying to think.
State you want to throw out? I mean, I'll listen to it.
It's actually tough because with Iowa, all of them are studs. Like they're either studs because they're old and they've been around, or like we have some guys that are going to be stepping into positions. I guess where does I feel like Kadyn could be, if he's not one of your top 10 offensive linemen. I feel like he could be. This could be a year. You know, Tristan balled out in his second year, and Lindy was very, very high. Lindy's a PFF guy to the bone. Like PFF and Linderbaum is the golden child. You know, whatever formula you guys have for grading people, he's
like 95 plus for like 2 years in a row. It was just absurd. I think I haven't decided. So I haven't finalized my tackles yet. Kadyn is right on the cusp because that really. You're looking just purely off last year. He wouldn't be a top 10 tackle, but like you got to project too, which like that makes it weird because like he is projection wise, like he has some of the best tools out of any tackle in the country. And he did it. Like I said, he played a lot better down the stretch of the season. So yeah, I haven't quite decided on that yet. He'd probably be the guy that I'd say as if he doesn't make my top 10 tackles, which again, I haven't decided that yet. He's definitely right on the outside looking in. So yeah, I would probably say Kadyn Proctor is the guy that I would say is the breakout or so player next year.
The other spot that we haven't mentioned, which is 27 minutes into an Iowa football podcast, tight end. You know, like we got Laporta and Kittle balling out for us in the playoffs. Hawkinson, obviously, Noah Fant, Luke Lachey. I've been projecting him to like ball out and just go off for 2 years now. Obviously, tough injury earlier in the season. He'll be back.
Mm-hmm.
We have another kid named Addison Ostrenga who got some good time. Those two in Iowa's offense, and again, new offensive coordinator. We'll see how much Tim, he said he likes to use tight ends, said he likes tight ends. We need that around Iowa City. Those two tight ends, I mean, if Lachey and Eric All, who will be in the draft upcoming as well, those two were going to be top 5 tight ends probably this year if they both don't get hurt. So I would watch out on your side, Max, for the Iowa tight ends because they could always make an appearance.
You just saved me, man, because I haven't put out my tight ends list yet, but I completely blanked on Luke Lachey. I almost assumed that he was in the draft. So I literally just wrote his name down on my list right now is to go back and watch him more. Because I loved him last year. And
he'll be in your top 10. He will be. Yeah,
exactly. You saved, like I said, I can almost guarantee you will be my top 10. I can't believe I almost forgot him. So that was, I loved him last year. The injury was brutal. Iowa, I mean, listen, their offense was bad last year. But also you have to keep in mind, like they were ravaged by injuries on that offensive side of the ball too. Like Cade McNamara, Eric All, Luke Lachey. I mean, they got killed by injuries last year. I think, Luke Lachey is definitely another guy that I can't believe I forgot about. And he's definitely a guy that I think is certainly one of the top tight ends in the country next year. What should be a much weaker tight end position. You lose a lot of really good tight ends from college football this past year. Obviously, Brock Bowers, Jatavion Sanders, other guys like that. Luke Lachey should be one of the top returning ones for sure.
Love that. Love to hear that. Just touchdowns all over the place in Iowa City.
Yep.
Max, we appreciate your time. 30 minutes in and out. I'm sure you have like 12 more podcasts to do today. You're just pumping out content and crazy. Where can people find you, dude?
Yeah, you can find me at Max Chadwick CFB on X, I guess you call it now. And then also at PFF.com. Like I said, the top 10 players, every position is coming out starting today. And then also, like you mentioned before, our preferred walk-on. It's on YouTube and anywhere you get your podcasts as well.
Love it. Max Chadwick, thank you for joining us. Thank you guys for listening to the episode. We'll talk to you next time. Peace. All right. Thanks, Max.
Thanks, Max.
Sweet. Thanks so much, guys. I really appreciate it.
See you, brother.
See ya.